There are some seats down here too, if you'd like to come down here. Fill those up. Okay. As we were looking through those photos, I just asked that probably for many of you, there'll be a memory from those photos somewhere. And there was one for me, particularly the wedding day, but we'll come back to that shortly. Firstly, it's, I'll say a pleasure to be officiating for Morris and Liam and Ruby for the loss of their mum and wife. And of course, Marie and Trevor, your daughter, Megan and Tom, and Nathan, who's here, and Sophie is in Hawaii, but she couldn't get back. But I'm sure her spirit will be here. When I say hang on to a memory, I think it's important that in life, things happen. Life at times is unfair. And sometimes we have to manage that, or it will manage us badly. And today there's still an amount of grief going on, and I acknowledge that as well, of this lovely, lovely lady. Just to put you in the picture for a minute, Morris, I have known for many, many years, since he was a little baby. And it was through close connection with the Jenningses, with my parents. So we go a long way back. And Lou, I got to meet when they decided to get married. Correct? It was. And Morris introduced me to Lou, and that was about 2002, roughly. Yeah. Just so I'll put you in the picture. I was chaplain at Devonport Navy Base, and Morris was Air Force. And but we knew each other before then. So at that stage, they asked me, both of them, would I officiate at their wedding, and I just said certainly. No problem whatsoever. That was March 2003, so that's 19 and a half years ago, say 20 years ago. So those 20 years have flown. It was a terrific occasion, it really was. It was a long night, I can assure you. There was a huge amount of laughter, a lot of fun, and great connections going on with all the families at that time. However, I do have a memory which will lead into what I want to say before we actually begin. It was a memory where those who are married, you'll probably realise this. There's a time when they do their readings and then they make their vows to one another, where they speak of their love and all that. You see, and they did that. And there's a part there where the celebrant actually said, okay, you can now kiss one another. Well, I didn't have a chance to do that. They were kissing before I even got to that phrase. So, those things, those little catchment things like that are quite beautiful, because as we know, the marriage ceremony is a lot of words, but that kiss is actually saying something physical about their marriage too. So it was terrific. Now we are here in sadness to celebrate Lou's life, okay? But before I do that, I just want to share with you just a little reflection that will put us into Lou's life. Because we are a mixed group of people, which is terrific. And we all have our spiritualities of some kind, which is terrific as well. I just want to share this with you, and let's reflect on it, and then we'll start to break into Lou's life with poems and so forth, okay? When we lose someone in death, as with Lou, we lose something, we lose their physical image and presence. That's a reality. They slip out of visible into invisible presence. A person who has entered into invisible presence, which we call death, is never beyond our love. We don't spend years and years of loving and then disappear. That's my understanding. This change of form is the reason why we cannot see those who have died. So we look at the photos. When the spirit leaves the body, it is no longer of space and time. The spirit is free. Distance and separation and pain hinder it no more. We must always remember that. Those who we loved on earth and now have died are our nearest neighbours. They are all around us. And once you have loved the person, your love for them will keep them alive in your lives. How do we keep someone alive after death? Where does the spirit go of a person when they die? Well, life continues after death as long as you remember the warmth of a person's presence, their smile and their tenderness of touch, and to discover in their absence the meaning and purpose they brought to your life, both in the good times and the difficult times. Remembering those moments today, death will not take over life. Life simply changes its form. Sadly, throughout our lives and throughout the history of many, many churches and religions, the eternal world has been spatialized. We have driven the eternal world out into some kind of distant galaxy, into the clouds, up there, somewhere. Yet the eternal world does not seem to be a place, but a state of being. And this suggests today that Lou, who has died, are here with us. Their spirit is here. They're in the air that we move in throughout our lives. The only difference really, between us and those who have died is that they are now in an invisible form. We cannot see them with the human eye, but we can sense their presence of those we love and have died without the refinement of our own spirit. We have to refine our own spirit to fully understand that that spirit is with us. You can sense them when you feel their presence to be close. Then you can say, their lives continue to touch my life. Love doesn't disappear into the clouds. The persons that we love are closer than we realize. So I'm saying this to you as a family and friends, stay close to Lou. Keep telling her that you love her. Use all those memories that you'll hear today as your sure way to keep growing in her life. Because it's by remembering them that Lou's life will live on forever. That's what we're here for. To delve into her life and take bits of it away. But to do that, we have to refine our own spirit to understand. Yes, I understand. So, our loved ones, as with Lou, are alive, doing what they've always done, and they are waiting for us at the centre of our celebrations. Lou's presence is with us. That's just a little intro into the spirit of a person. Because now the spirit will come alive in the poetry, in her photographs, in her paintings, and in the lives of Liam and Ruby because her spirit through your mum and dad is there. Hard to understand, but time will help that. You know, so often you hear people say, oh, look, we'll fill that gap of your grief. Well, you can't fill that gap of grief. It takes time to do that. And when it comes down to a family that's in deep sadness, you've got to remember, in time, the memories and the good things will start to fill that gap, quietly but slowly. You hear people say, you know, get on with it, harden up. You do, you hear that, for goodness sake. Let the process, let the time take its time. And that's the beauty to respect Lou. Take your time. Don't hurry it. So we're going to hear stories. We're going to hear poetry. So let's just sit back and listen to that now. Okay? So we begin with the first of the poems.
Hello everybody, I'm Rachel Garrett. Nice to meet you all, beautiful family and friends. Before I read a poem, I do want to share a few little anecdotes. And I'm going to be speaking on behalf of my family, David, Jessie, Summer, and my fellow gym buddies, Lou's gym buddies, the Sparrows. I'll explain all that in a little while. So we met Lou and her family about 9 or 10 years ago and have been friends ever since. Lou and I met at the gym in Johnsonville, and when we realised we lived 1 minute down the road from each other, we quickly got our families together for a Friday pizza night. One of many fun evenings spent with Lou, Mo, Ruby, Liam, and of course Miss Molly, the fluffy queen of the house. These evenings traditionally began with bubbles and Doritos, non-stop talking, more bubbles, there for Mo, then pizza, music, and some kind of game. Cards Against Humanity comes to mind while the kids weren't around. More bubbles. Be a waste not to finish the bottle, eh, Mo? And then a very happy walk home. Lou and I became fast friends. Lots of walks, talks, iced coffees, jar coffees, crazy dancing at San Fran with Dave and Mo, and family weekends away together in Waikanae, where our children enjoyed each other's company as much as we did. There were many photography sessions where Lou and Dave, also a photographer, would enjoy discussing the latest camera bodies, lenses for certain types of photos, or the many styles of photography that Lou was interested in pursuing. We so enjoyed Lou's inquisitive and intelligent mind, full of thoughts, inspiration, passion, love, compassion and care. Her melodic voice, her expressive eyes, her art and creative talents, and her sense of humour and her laugh. At the gym, Lou regularly entered the studio with an excited skip in her step and her own special happy to be here dance. The gym was where the Sparrows was born. Li Cheng, Jet, Maria, Wei Ling, Lou and myself, plus Nora, in the early days. We are a group of youthful fitness buddies who love to exercise together, eat fabulous food, laugh, support one another and talk non-stop. Hence the name The Sparrows, which Li Cheng named our chat group after one extremely chatty afternoon. Lou is very much loved by the Sparrows and will be treasured for her loving and caring nature, her quick wit, her gift of the gab, and her great sense of humour. I can still see her up the front of the step class, for all those gym people, you'll understand it, making up her own moves, and then she looks back at us with a cheeky, playful look and a wink. There were also knowing glances during the class to do with time-challenged, less musically coordinated classmates. Lou was always the linguist, an avid reader, her way with words using perfect grammar and punctuation saw many an article written and published. She chose a poem by the 18th century poet Thomas Moore to be read today, and I will finish with this. Let fate do her worst. There are relics of joy, bright dreams of the past, which she cannot destroy, which come in the night time of sorrow and care, and bring back the features which joy used to wear. Long, long be my heart with such memories filled, like the vase in which roses have once been distilled. You may break, you may shatter the vase if you will, but the scent of the roses will hang round it still. Love you guys. Love you, Lulu.
I was asked to do a reading at their wedding, and Louise and Morris chose this particular reading, and I really struggled to understand. I'm a simple soul, and I really sort of couldn't get my head around it, but did my best or anything like that. But it was a bit of a struggle. So thanks, Louise, for the gift of choosing this absolutely beautiful, simple, short, timeless poem. Do not stand in my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
Hello, you beautiful people. Full house today. Gemma and I actually went to Newlands Intermediate prior to getting here, and I think they're having a meatball competition, which we might all head over to afterwards. I'm Grant. I've known Lou and the family for quite some time, and I'm honoured to be able to say a few words. So, thinking about her, and that's such a gorgeous photo, Morris. That's Lou. That's what I, or who I met in 1992. So we go back that far. Louise Pye, as she was known then, was living in Christchurch, and I met her, and it would have been the late autumn of 1992. Now, I remember one of the first things I overheard her saying. She was introducing herself to somebody in our soccer team, and when Lou used to say, "Hi, I'm Louise Pye," she would add on at the end, Louise Pye P-Y-E. The grammar Nazi coming out and just making sure that people knew how it was spelt. Now, Pye P-Y-E might well have been a Maori tribe from the Whanganui, and a lot of people would ask, after she said, Louise Pye P-Y-E, "Are you Maori?" And she'd sigh, throw her head back and then squint. She had a squint. I'll talk about the squint in a minute. So I met her. I joined a men's football team, and it was a Sunday team. And for those of us who couldn't play on Saturdays, we joined this team, and it just happened to be a team called the Echo Records Sunday Football Team. And it was pretty social, a lot of fun, but over the sort of season that I joined back in 92, the 13 or 14 of us in the team became quite close. And Lou was the girlfriend of one of the lads in the team at that time, a lovely guy called John Looney. Just remember that name. Looney was how it looks. But Greg's right, John Lunny. So Lou was a really, really good footy player. She was an avid cheerleader for us. She used to come along to every game, and as that increased, she used to get more and more involved. She was playing her own competitive games at that stage and was doing very well, but she hitched herself to our team on a Sunday and would be there an hour beforehand, and she really became not our mascot. She was like a 14th, 15th player. She was incredibly good. She'd attend our practices during the week, and though it was a men's competition, we did sub her on a few times, and she was so good that she would be nutmegging whatever she could, whenever she could. She would be nutmegging several of the guys, and then she'd look around and go, we loved it. We loved her playing. And I know that that was one of her probably most precious memories, scoring goals against us guys at practice in the gymnasium of Linwood High School back then. Girl power before the Spice Girls were even invented. So it was at about that time that she was also named in the Canterbury women's soccer team. A credit to her natural skill set, her speed, and her really pointy elbows. So I was a rep selling TAC music cassettes. Remember those? And how old do they make us feel? So I used to travel around the South Island. I used to call in on all the music shops, and the football actually became quite important to me back then. As I said, the team bonded really well and we were doing very well. It became quite serious. So I gave up my burgeoning career in selling cassettes. It was probably a dying business anyway. And managed to get a job at the music shop that sponsored the team. Great big shop in the South Island called Echo Records. And at the time, it was one of the biggest independent music shops in the country. A few of the lads in the team actually worked there, and so did Lou. So I started on my first day, and Lou was one of the first people that I actually worked in this huge cavernous shop. There was a lot of staff. But her and I got on really, really well, and obviously I'd met her already on the footy pitch. She was smiley as she is there. That's just such a classic shot. So pretty. She was tall. She was whippet thin. She was incredibly fit. And she had such an incredibly sharp sense of humour. She attracted customers to her like bees to honey. So what was hilarious about Lou was her ability to be able to gently take the mick out of those customers who weren't quite onto it as much as she felt they should be. And there were a lot of them. Those ones who would come up to the counter in the shop and ask for that song, you know, the one that goes da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and then something, and then ding. Or that compilation CD with that guy on it, you know, he's got short hair and he's sang that other song. So we would serve our customers and then we'd just casually look along the counter and here's Lou and she's going like this. And it was the squinting of the eyes that we would look and we'd see and we'd take notice. And what that squint was, yeah, I've got a right muppet here. So we'd listen in, and the mocking was never cruel, but it kept us and our in-jokes happy as we whiled away the hours in that shop. And she was just such a precious part of that team. There was one memory that I had, and I used to enjoy talking about it with her so much. It's kind of hard to believe. There was a chap who used to drive down from Nelson about 4.5 hours to our shop, and he would order really hardcore dance music. Now, this is back in the 90s, when that sort of stuff was really only starting to come out. We had a huge catalogue of sort of German import music, and he would go through there. He used to wear a white shell suit. He had a shaved head. He would have been about 30, and he had quite a whiff about him, quite smelly. We would sort of take turns at not serving him. I remember Lou looked up from whatever she was doing behind the counter, and he was there, and there was no avoiding it, so she got to look after him. And she hadn't looked after him before. We'd told her about this chap when we'd dealt with him. So the idea about ordering a CD was that you would give your name, your phone number, and then we would give you a ring when this thing came in, and we'd ask for a deposit. So there was a bit of a process that Lou had to go through. And she got most of the details. This fella didn't have a phone number. He apparently lived in a tree in Nelson. But he gave the neighbour's phone number, so that's how we were going to get in contact. And the last question that Lou asked, and I still remember I was probably about 6 or 7 feet away along the counter, just waiting for this moment. And what's your name? And she's got her pen there and she's ready to write it down. And this chap, without a word of a lie, because it was his name, looked at her and said, "My name's Spontaneous Search Party. Would you like me to spell that for you?" Louise, without missing a beat, started writing and looked up and with a straight face said, "And do you mind if I call you Spon?" Spontaneous Search Party. If you do a Google search, there is one entry on Google about something that he did. It's a real thing. So at around that time, working with Lou at Echo, I realised that she would develop obsessions. She would become quite fascinated about something. It was a passive interest at first, but then it would become really intense. And that might last for days, it might last for weeks or even months. But while she had that passion, she was inflamed with it. Now, I'm just going to read a couple of these things. Some of you may recognise some of this still. So in the 90s, as I said, dance music was coming out, but then we also had Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana, a lot of boy bands, Oasis, Blur, England American music that was very guitar dominated. Louise liked Chaka Khan. Louise would put on Chaka Khan in the shop, and everyone would frown and furrow their brows. Louise didn't care. Louise would take off Chaka Khan and put on Bruce Springsteen because that was cultured. And Bruce Springsteen had been cool in the 80s, then he went out in the 90s, and then he sort of came back. Didn't matter, Lou was right there. And then she'd finish with Steely Dan. And Steely Dan is real old school. And a little bit jazzy, and she would, as the crowds cleared at our busy lunch period, she didn't care. She was listening to Steely Dan. That was on. Potato chips. Oh yeah? Still? Potato chips. And back in the 90s, I don't know whether you guys ever did it or saw it, you could apparently put them into a microwave, the packets, once you've eaten them. And they'd shrink. You remember that as well? Yeah. So she had a collection of shrunken potato chip packets that was in, if not the hundreds, then very close to it. She was fascinated with them. 2013, I went to Europe and I specifically collected a whole lot of European chip packets to bring back and give to her. I thought that was the most meaningful gift that I could get. She had a huge interest in Mike Leigh, who was an English movie producer, director, and some of his really early movies. Now, if you get 2 hours to kill and you've done all of Netflix, then try and find the movie called Abigail's Party by Mike Leigh. She could imitate Beverly, who is a horrific woman who is the star of the movie. And Lou would absolutely nail her. She adored Beverly. I think she wanted to be Beverly when she grew up. Painting on canvas became an enormous thing, and I think that lasted. She had a massive interest in feminist writers and artists, and she kept that through. She was amazing at table tennis and would embarrass anyone who thought that they were good. And I believe she was also a rep tennis player as well. So a very skilled sportswoman. She introduced me to sushi in the 90s, and like sushi, that's just way out. What's seaweed? What's that about? Till then, the most exotic thing that you could possibly find in Christchurch was probably barbecue sauce for your mince pie. She had a passion for linen shirts and went through a stage of having every single pastel colour that you could have in linen shirts. And then, of course, most recently, her phenomenal interest and love for photography. Something that I loved and shared with her, but not to the scale that she took it to. And she is an artist. She's an absolute artist. So after several years of wonderful laughs together at Echo, and I know that the guys that are working around the country who were all part of that team back then in the 90s, they would have beautiful memories of her and be terribly sad of her passing. I decided that I was going to leave that little group. It was like a family, and I was going to go and live in Australia, and I chose to live in Noosa, which was a hell of a place. Lou had left her partner at about that point, and had decided that it was either take the plunge and sort of marry John or leave. And I'm not sure that she could bear the thought of being called Lou Looney, or indeed, as she would probably have preferred it, Lou Looney Pie. So she left, and that's a wee bit twee. That's not quite the case, but let's leave it at that for now. And she decided that she would actually go travelling, and she came over and wanted to see what Australia was like. So she stayed at my place for a while. She got a job cleaning a movie theatre, which I think was about her rock bottom. That was when the career took a real nosedive, and she knew that it could only go up from there. But it was at that time that I noticed that she never came swimming. She didn't like swimming at the beach, never went swimming at the beach. In Noosa, that's what you do there. And indeed, we had a communal swimming pool at our block of flats, and she didn't go swimming there. And when I sort of pushed her about it, she said that she had a terrible, terrible fear of sharks. There's not a lot of sharks that inhabit the swimming pools in Australia, but... and I believe that came from an experience that she had in Nauru when the family was based there when she was very young, and there was a little girl who was taken from the knee-depth water over in Nauru. So something that stayed with her for a long, long time. She battled that. Soon after getting to Aussie, she met a lovely Irish lad, and they spent several months driving along the coast of Aussie together, and she had a wonderful time, made some awesome memories up and down the coast of Aussie. Before she said goodbye to him, she worked in Sydney for a while, And then she moved over to Auckland, where, if I can wrap up my part of her story, she went on to achieve the three greatest things that she did in her life. It was meeting and marrying Morris, and giving birth and raising these two beautiful kids, Ruby and Liam. I'm so proud of her as a friend and the positive influences that she has had on all three of you wonderful specimens. And I know she's equipped you kids so well for your exciting lives ahead. We'll remember her forever, and I love her to bits. Thanks, everyone.
I hope I can do this. I have so many fabulous memories of Louise. Such good times. But I really struggled to put anything on paper. I've been trying to put something on paper for the last week, and I just couldn't get a thread of anything. I couldn't tell a story. It's all not coherent, but I'm going to ramble on anyway and give you what I've got here. On paper, my niece, but in reality, Louise was my younger sister from day one. A mere 8 years. I don't know if you're going to be helpful, Marie. A mere 8 years separate us, exactly half the age group between her mother and I. Our lives forever entwined. One of the fantastic pluses of me being an intra-generational afterthought by my parents. Wasn't I? From kids playing together when we visited the Pies in Turangi and in Kakatahi up the Paraparas, or both as teenagers, just. Louise sharing my bedroom in Palmerston North under the pretext of visiting Grandma, but actually in reality to have KFC, which didn't exist in Whanganui in the 70s. Or I would visit Wanganui and share Louise's room, and we would exchange yarns and chips long into the night. On one such visit, I noticed a few chip packets on a shelf in her wardrobe. The packets were stashed so to avoid putting them in the household rubbish, and thus avoiding interrogation from Marie. It was then that I realised Louise had quite a thing for chips. And this was the beginning of her chip packet collection, as mentioned by Grant. Who knew there was such a thing? Make sure, if you're up at the house, to take time and have a look at it. It's on display. Fast forward through the time when the Grants probably covered in the 80s and early 90s. In the late 90s, back from Camp America and a brief look overseas, Louise lived in Sydney when we were there also. It became a ritual for me to escape young children on a Saturday morning, pick her up from Neutral Bay and head to Chatswood for coffee, clothing shops and the sushi train. Louise loved to spend time with Tom, me and our young children. I seem to remember kids' birthdays parties especially, where Louise took on roles as chief pirate, Pocahontas or artist extraordinaire. A special day for both of us, we went to see the New Zealand women's basketball team at the 2000 Olympics. We got horribly written off and had such a great day. You gotta love the intra-generational mix. Ironically, Louise was more like an auntie than a cousin to my young children at the time. Naturally, this relationship transformed back to cousins in the last decade or so. And so those changed bonds were lovely to see. Back in New Zealand, at Morris and Louise's wedding, Grant and I were in the wings. My 9-year-old daughter Sophie did a reading. Bonds with the next generations were forming and continuing with the arrival of Ruby and Liam. Visits to Te Araha, where the Pies and the Jennings cohabited, had the bonus of 2 young Jennings to see. At the time of the Christchurch earthquakes, Louise and Morris's Blenheim house was a real bolt hole for us on several occasions. Their next move brought them to Wellington. Louise, Marie and I were never short of an excuse to get together. It would always involve swapping of clothes and drinking of Lindau, and one of us would love chips. Louise, so much a part of my life and my family's too. Tom and I are recent returnees to the Wellington area, and this was not a moment too soon to spend precious time with my lovely Lou, Mo, Ruby and Liam, and to be here too for Marie, Trevor and Greg, where they couldn't be. Mo, you've been amazing. Father, cook, carer, nurse, mentor, and more. Oh, and a full-time job as well. An inspiration for us all. Life is a story. Sing it. Life is a game. Play it. Life is a challenge. Meet it. Life is a sacrifice. Offer it. And life is love. Enjoy it. That's it from me. I've got part 2 to come up, unfortunately. So my daughter, Sophie, has sent something through. She wasn't able to be here. So I get to read that as well. I think it'll be a bit easier, I hope. Oh, I might need my glasses. For those I haven't met before, I'm Sophie, Louise's cousin. Unfortunately, I'm overseas at the moment, so Mum is reading this out on my behalf. Not only was Lou my wonderful cousin, she was also appointed as godmother, or what I like to call my fairy godmother. From day dot, Lou has been a pivotal figure in my life. Fond memories include Louise's visits while we lived in Australia, and then eventually to Singapore along with her new husband Morris. Extended family, Christmases in Whanganui and Waihi, and our trips back to Te Araha, New Zealand, when Ruby and Liam were born and growing up. For our Brunel family, living overseas at the time, it was so special to be able to come back and to be hosted by Lou, Mo, Marie and Trev in Te Araha, and I always loved our visits there. As I grew up and moved back to New Zealand, my relationship with Lou continued to strengthen. No longer relegated to the kids' table, I started to enjoy the invites to drink bubbles with Louise, most often with a healthy side of cheese supreme Doritos. When I moved to Wellington for uni, Louise always looked out for me and made sure I wasn't struggling too much on a subsistence diet of 2-minute noodles and cheap $8 bottles of wine. I received ample invites to their place in Johnsonville for delicious dinners, movie nights in, and Mo's famous lemon crepes in the mornings. And even once a pick-up from the Trentham races when the trains were down and Uber fares were through the roof. Louise was an incredible, caring and thoughtful person, and I'm so grateful for all of her support over the years. It was during these uni years and my first years of work in Wellington where Lou and I had our big heart-to-heart convos. I learnt more about her own uni experiences and life as a young, inspired artist with a penchant for record stores and grungy parties. And this was really when, beyond being just cousins, we got to become incredibly good friends. I was able to see so many different exceptional sides of Louise. I saw an amazing and loving wife to Morris. There was no one she would rather sing a karaoke duo with or dance with at an 80s disco party on Cuba Street. I saw an incredibly gentle and kind mother who would always be there supporting Ruby and Liam on the sidelines of sports games, taking them to music lessons and being available at any time of day to snuggle up on the couch to give cuddles and have her hair twirled. I saw a loving daughter and sister who cherished the small, everyday moments with Marie, Trev and Greg over cups of tea and slices of Irish loaf whenever they could get together. I saw a relentlessly creative person who always sought opportunities to pause and appreciate the beauty around her, especially through her photography and writing. In all those ways, Louise was and continues to be one of my biggest role models in life. It's pretty hard to put into words how much of an impact one person can have on your life and how significant of a blow it can be when that person leaves. While I will never have much of a way with words as our Lou, I hope she knows how much she was loved and how much she will be missed. Thank you.
Hey, it's great that you're all here. It kind of sort of sucks as well too because of the situation that we find ourselves in here. But it's great that you're here to celebrate Louise and also support my family, you know, Ruby and Liam, myself, and our wider family here as well. So thank you. Lou always did like a good storage solution. But not quite the one she had in mind. But our kitchen pantry is a homage to that fine art, and there's been plenty of hours between her and Karen, who's a friend of ours who's in Denmark, so we're recording this for later on. But they would spend a lot of conversational time dedicated to that fine art, and so our pantry is a homage to that. Originally we were going to try and find a teapot for her, but we couldn't find one large enough because Lou's artwork had a lot of references to teapot really early on, and she loved a good cup of tea, so yeah. So Lou had a really wondrous ability to connect with people and to get along with people. She loved to talk, she loved to share stories and anecdotes, and you know, your presence of all these people here is a real testimony to that. Her gift for storytelling, her lightning wit, that wicked sense of humour and playfulness is just amazing. And you know, she could entertain a whole room, have people in stitches, you know, in very short order. And it's a skill that I think she honed to fine art from a very young age, you know, because they moved around a bit when you guys were younger, you know, meeting lots of different people, and it helps you make a room safe. And you know, I was talking to Madeleine earlier in the week, and you know, it wasn't a cliche to say that she really brought light and joy into a room without a doubt. And her gift kind of transcended the internet too, just trawling through her Instagram account over the past week, you know, all the kind of comments that she had and the community that she created with photographers. You know, she really connected with people through her writing and her wit and her humour. And I must admit, I did take advantage of it a few times, and I would take a back seat in social situations knowing I just had to hand her a Lindauer and then let her rip, you know. And she observed really clear early on in our relationship that it could only be one funny person in a relationship, and she was very much it. Oh, yeah, I played the straight guy, absolutely, yeah. I was a laurel to her Hardy, I think, anyway. But as a teenager, Lou imagined herself to be a solid gold dancer, and it would find its way into our life at different moments, be it in the kitchen or the living room, dancing with the Garretts. And I found out this really early on in one of our dates. We had a few drinks, went to a bar in Auckland, and she started dancing, and she launched into these lunges and this liturgical arm waving and her signature 80s head flick. I don't know if you guys remember that one. And it certainly came handy later on. We're at a really crowded pub in Hamilton, I think, with you, Sarah, and sort of lamenting that we couldn't get on the dance floor because it was jam-packed. And she took matters into her own hands. She sort of leapt up there, and then with a few strategic dance moves, created a bit of space that we could then join with. So it was, it was something to behold. Anyway, so but Lou also had a really subversive kind of mischievous, independent streak. She'd like to flip the bird to the man, and I think that's kind of where her interest in feminism sort of came from as well. Whether it was wearing men's pyjamas and sneakers at a sixth form ball back in the 80s, it would have been unheard of then, to a series of paintings where she'd buy these old landscape paintings from second-hand shops, paint up the frame and would write something like, get shit done, or yeah, nah, kind of sort of things. And then sometimes the streak went a little too far, and there are a couple of stories. One she disclosed to me, and where she, for some reason, weed on one of her friends in the shower. And he is a teenager, so I don't quite know what brought that on. But anyway, overexcited maybe. And then one time during manual class, she disclosed a story to me where she collected the measurements of the more well-developed classmates and then on-sold those to the boys in woodwork. And it's no doubt to fund her chippy addiction. But anyway, so she was quite entrepreneurial in that regard, I suppose, and she was caught at some point, I think. So Lou also had a really fierce competitive streak. Was playing on the football field, for the Canterbury women's football team. Water polo, basketball. I forgot about the table tennis. She dedicated a lot of hours, hitting the table tennis against the wall there. She was out to win, even if it was a board game. The only sort of thing she wasn't interested in was card games, and she was never interested in those. Lou was also really adaptable. She turned her hand to all manner of jobs. We heard that she grew up in Nauru, so she took the job of Shark Princess very seriously. But as a young girl, I think she sold encyclopedias. I believe she sorted wool at some point, I don't know if that was true or not, but she's sitting in a ticket booth at a dump and would be tanning in between kind of cars coming through on the roof, working at a bar, a record store, Camp America council lifeguard, cleaning cinemas, selling jewellery, at one point in Australia, to a corporate marketing gig, working at public health, school secretary in Te Aroha, and of course more proofreader and editor, and photographer more recently. She was also really tough. I mean, she certainly had to be over the last few years. But before that, she had 2 home births. And, she was immensely proud. And Ruby was born in the kitchen. Leanne was born in the living room. And but that toughness didn't extend to the moment she dipped a toe in the birth pool. This on the first birth, and I'd slaved for bloody hours filling up this birth pool. We'd put the hot water cylinder into it. I was boiling pots on the stove, the jug, running up and down the hallway, filling it up. So I was really proud of my efforts, and the moment arrived when she eagerly sought the soothing waters of the birth pool, and then with one sort of word just dripping with dissatisfaction, she cleaved my pride in two, and all she said was just, disappointed. So, yeah. Yeah, right, anyway, so... Okay, but of course she was loaded with creative talent as well, so just stacked with creative energy, whether it was language or visual arts or craft, and I was kind of envious of it. It was just amazing, just so rich with it. She was an amazing artist, painter, a published writer. She loved words and language. Great interior designer. I mean, she designed basically the house in the way that it is now. A poet and, of course, a dancer. She describes herself as an untrained expressive dancer, is the term phrase. Lou loved the imagery of poetry, and I think that's why she liked Bruce Springsteen, because of his lyrics. But her talent, her expression, her creativity found all sorts of ways to be expressed in different ways. And one I find particularly endearing is when we plan weekends away. You know, I might write a list. That's what most normal people do, but not for her. And what she would do instead would carefully draw and illustrate the outfits on a scrap of paper. And so each kind of weekend away became an opportunity to create. And there's these little illustrations of a weekend and these well coordinated outfits. And of course, the photography is just amazing. I just in constant awe of that. And Lou would describe herself as a hunter of light and shadow, the dawn and the gloaming, and were her special times of the day. You know, many trip away, with the kids and I would inevitably involve one, some, or all of us being dragged out to chase the changes in the light, and to be subjects. And the kids particularly, were her muse. And there'd be times Lou would be driving along and snapping away, sort of taking these really banal street scenes. I was going, what is she doing? And but she'd be flicking the camera at the same time to create this sort of blurred, painterly effect. And it was just, her vision for it was just incredible. And she really, truly saw the world in a different way. But I have to apologise if you encountered slow traffic on the motorway. That was probably me slowing down to help enable her to take a photo somewhere. But she would veer suddenly off the footpath to take, reflections of light in a puddle, and she would just see the world just through light, shadow, and colour. And her imagination was such a rich place, which she would then share with us from time to time, and in different ways. Be it her wit, her lists for going away, her poetry, painting, photography, or dance. We'd get a chance to sort of see that. And I'll reference a Bruce Springsteen song here because it's on a playlist, but it was her secret garden. I think this is a place that was really, truly hers, and it was a really wondrous place. So I just wanted to read something from, this is a book that, some notes from the Departure Lounge, which Lou sort of put together and just to help guide today's ceremony. But there's this little quote here that she, it's from a letter from Vincent van Gogh to his brother Theo, and it goes like this. He says, "I'm concerned with the world only in that I have certain obligation and way, as it were, because I've walked this earth for 30 years, to leave a certain souvenir in the form of drawings or paintings in gratitude, not done to please some movement or other, but in which an honest human feeling is expressed." And then Lou's written in quotes here, "Art is a souvenir of life and gratitude." I love that. And as my ability to write for expression diminishes, I'm left with photography, and I leave that as my souvenir with love and gratitude. And on the way out, there's a box there of some of Lou's, before she passed away, she got all these photos printed on a little card, so you're welcome to take one of those away as one of her souvenir and gratitude. Lou's best creative work was Ruby and Lamb, of course. And, when we talked about having kids, we didn't really quite know how we would take to being parenting. You don't really know. But from the moment Ruby was born, Lou just fell in love with being a parent, with being a mum. And she was really good at it. Years ago, for the kids, Lou made the observation that she'd love the detail of her life. And we'd often have these sort of late night conversations in bed. And what I think it's what made her a great photographer and raconteur and humorist, and I think it enabled her to be a great mum. She really, one of her favourite experiences was just to follow the details of their little lives as they were growing up. She joined in their imagination as toddlers. Loved how they learned language and the kind of those sort of bespoke words that kids have, or to lend an ear after school, to be there with a snack and so on. And of course the late night chats when the kids would come in and have a yarn, and she knew that you guys were just stalling to go to bed, but she loved it all the same. So loaded with talent, that wicked sense of humour, a keen observer, passionate about life and the details of it. And of course we know that she was passionate about chips as well, and at many party at her younger years, she'd be found on the balcony or the terrace with the smokers embracing a bowl of Bluebird's finest. And of course, it, culminated in this, well curated chip packet collection. And I knew it was special because not long after we got together, she actually got in touch with an ex-boyfriend to kind of get it. And then through various sort of deployments, I've added to it to this day. So honestly, I was hugely lucky to have met Lou. It was just by sheer dumb luck that I happened to sit down at that place at that time at the Devonport Wine and Food Festival next to Marie. Thank you. And I've been blessed with her presence in my life ever since. And I know other people have had that same experience of Lou. She really was unique, and I know it's kind of sound cliche, but it's really was the case. Her orbit, being in her orbit, sort of made the trials and tribulations and stresses of day-to-day life just a little bit easier to handle. She brought a lot of fun and warmth and light and beauty, and that meeting just created a cascade of experiences I'll be forever grateful for. And it's I do it all over again in a heartbeat. And I know our lives are a lot richer for a light-filled presence, and that's what we've got to hold on to, from here on in. Just on that note, there is a book at the back with a pen. And if you've got any little stories or anecdotes, just do write them in, because one of the things, I was having a conversation somewhere earlier in the week, and just how, whilst I've lived with Lou for 20 odd years, there's still lots of life that she lived there where I wasn't around, that you shared with her directly, and it'd be great to hear some of those stories and what those anecdotes might be, so just to kind of round out, and because I want to collect it all, I kind of want to know it all, as much as we can remember anyway. Finally, I want to say thanks to a bunch of people. The kids and I have had a lot of great practical support and emotional support over the past week, with visits and food, popping down to the supermarket, getting fish and chips at the last minute because the car battery was flat, and being checked up on in a really good way, and it's really heartening. And the list of people is really long, but I want to particularly acknowledge, Megan, you've been absolute rock this past couple of weeks. And to Matt, who couldn't make it, unfortunately, because he's got COVID. Rach and Dave as well, and the Sparrow as well, helped with the afternoon tea here, and of course Pete as well. Thank you. I'm also forever grateful to the hospice team. I'm not sure if they're here or not, but especially Claire, who walked with us through this journey. And there's a whole team of people like Lou's counsellor, Viviana, the occupational therapist, Linda and Catherine, her dietitian, Georgie, Julie, the physiotherapist, the crack team of nurses and carers that came in and helped Lou. I think Ronnie and Denise and Cheryl, the hospice doctors, Janet, Florrie, and Alana, and of course the pharmacy team, who I was constantly sort of visiting as well. I also need to thank the Care and Call team, so Jess and Amanda, who are the team leaders there, and of course Priscilla, Cecilia, and towards the end there, Joy as well. And I particularly want to acknowledge Priscilla and Cecilia. They were Lou's carers for hours and days on end, and months, and they, your loving, gentle presence, your compassion and humour, and the cleaning, was just amazing. And I know that you had a really kind of close connection with her too, and I wanted to acknowledge them. Not sure if you're here or not, but if you could make it. And to the rest of us, if you've got a bit of money to sort of throw away, give away, donate it to the hospice, because they did a really good job. So Lou, Lou is such an easy person to love right from the get-go. We just sort of hit it off, and starting with music. And it's just a lovable, gorgeous person. Gonna miss her terribly. But I want you to, when you notice that kind of the play of light, that shadow, and the reflection, that'll be her, right? That's her always present, and that's something I want to take away and encourage you to take away as well. So thank you, Pete.
Yeah.
here. Come here. That one. Thank you. Yeah.
Kia ora. So a lot of you don't know me. It's really, tough situation to meet you all in. I'm a really old friend of Morris's from university days. And he's asked me to read a few messages from people who couldn't be here today. But very quickly, I just want to say something very short about getting to know Louise. Back in the day, when we had joined Facebook, Morris was a bit too lazy to get his own Facebook. So he friend requested me via Louise's, which was a bit of a fateful mistake because we just went from there. It was many years before I actually met her, but I just kept hearing about this amazing person that Morris had married, and then got to know her once they moved to Wellington, which has just been such an amazing gift in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful, and I think we all are, to have known Louise. So I'm just going to read some messages now from people who weren't able to come today. This first one is from Julie from Melbourne. She knew Lou since she was 19 and living in Christchurch back in the 1990s. So this is from Julie. My memory of the very first time I met Lou is still as vivid today as it was on that Saturday night in early 1988 when I met her. There was this gorgeous, bubbly 19-year-old art student with a fantastic head of blonde, wavy hair who was so open and friendly and super funny. I was a 27-year-old single mum at the time, and we were the girlfriends of two Christchurch mates. And while those relationships didn't last, ours did. Those early years involved a lot of dancing in Christchurch nightclubs, going to parties and socialising in general, and there were a lot of laughs. Lou always cracked me up with her quirky take on things, and I think my most enduring feeling from then was laughing a lot. A memory from those earlier days is during the 90s when Lou scored a Peter Andre poster from her workplace, Echo Records, which took pride of place in my pre-teenage daughter's room for quite some time. As time moved on, our lives led us to different places, and for many years we only got to catch up when we both ended up in the same place. And then finally we're in the same town again for a number of years, when Lou and Morris moved to Wellington. It was so good to have my friend back within reach, and like all those enduring friendships, it never mattered how much time lapsed. We always just picked up where we had left off. Over the years we've been at each other's weddings, shared good news and bad, the worst of that being Lou's diagnosis, which completely flattened me. I have so many memories of Lou over the 34 years I've known her, and hold as precious memories some of her art that she's given me over the years. In my heart and mind, she's still that gorgeous, vibrant, witty young woman I met all those years ago. I've always loved her and always will. That's from Julie. The next is a message from Chloe Lodge, a professional photographer Lou met through an Instagram photography community. Chloe says, Lou and I met through Instagram when I landed on Kiwi shores almost 4 years ago, and she instantly welcomed me into her whānau. We connected through our love of the lens, light, and the colour blue. I'll be grateful every day for her friendship, her selection of goat gifts, and tireless support of my crazy ideas. I'll especially remember how we lifted each other from our respective low-lying fog. We laughed, grew, and healed. I've never met someone who radiates such love, wit, and wisdom in all the same breath until I met Lou. We only met in person once when we had our mini Petone photography retreat and treats while watching the Gigi's in Australia. Will stay with me always. Lou's determination, courage, and light will continue to radiate through our photography community for a very, very long time. She was deeply, deeply loved and will be missed incredibly. With much love, Chloe. And this is from our mutual friends, Khan, Michael, Aviaya, Isabella, and Leva Carey in Copenhagen. Darling Lou, you're always about light, art, love, and family. We have always loved spending time with you and your gorgeous family. We have awesome memories of fun games, fish and chips on the beach, lots and lots of talking and belly laughs, coffee walks, and sharing our passion for the arts. Your energy, creativity, wit, uplifting spirit and humour has always been inspiring and captivating. And we feel so lucky and fortunate to have been part of your life. Your departure was just too early and too unfair to comprehend and accept, and it is just heartbreaking. You may have changed address, but your presence, art, stories, laugh, and sparkly spirit will continue to live forever through the glimmers of sunshine on the waves, and the rays of sunshine on the sky, and the souls of your beautiful children, and the hearts and memories of all of us who love you so very much. We will lift our glasses of bubbly to celebrate you as the ray of sunshine you were. We know you will be up there surrounded by light, looking for the perfect angle and the perfect view to send messages of love and capture more stories. Aroha Nui, Kan, Michael, Aviaya, Isabella and Leva. And the final message is from Angie in South Africa, a good friend of Lou through their shared interest in photography. A tribute to my precious, beloved friend from Angie. I'm so very sad that I couldn't be there today with you all to celebrate our incredible Lou. But I'm so very grateful that I got to walk with her right up into her final hours earthside. My thoughts and prayers are with you, Mo, Ruby, Liam, Marie, Trev, Megan, and I'm with you in spirit today. Lou and I discussed this next season a lot over the past years. We navigated it back and forth, and when she looked at me for the last time that Friday, it all made sense. In between the light of a day and loss, there is this space. It isn't really called anything. It is just the speckled light that reveals the tenderness and strength that only those who speak the same language can see. It is then through this loss that we realise that light and love have this incredible ability to sneak into every space, and because of it we get to see its power forever. I'll always cherish our journeys capturing the light dancing on the ocean, and forest weddings, families, adventures. Oh, and the mist. Lou would call me up and say, I need to be in this mist. I'd drive all around Wellington looking for the perfect place. I realised very early on in our adventures together that she didn't need to find extraordinary places to capture the light. She created it. She was that extraordinary. Lou and I spent months planning a photography book adventure, and we were so excited to get started. And when life was toppled sideways that April, it didn't hold Lou back. She documented the life she so cherished and continued to create. Diptych, triptych, joy. She could see life in a new way and revealed sides of light that others were drawn to because it was real, original, glorious, and delicately laced with her love. Spend 5 minutes reading the comments on her Instagram page and you realise how she inspired so many across the globe. They all valued her wit, her encouragement, her sincerity, humility, her poetic genius, her joy, her light, her indescribable talent. You didn't need to see Lou to love her. She shone in ways you didn't need senses to embrace. Lou was extraordinary. Lou spoke light, whispered love, sang the stars and loved with every soul she could embrace, no matter what detours were placed in her path. She created magic, and it is the kind that she gifted us for days like today. I feel so incredibly blessed that Lou trusted me when the light was speckled in a shadow, where she would hold the lantern, push her body to its limits, and adapt in seemingly impossible valleys. She allowed me into this sacred space, and it was here that I really got to look deep into her spirit. Mo, Ruby, and Liam. I love the endless stories she used to tell me about your dreams, your hearts, your adventures as the King of Russia. Through the scenes of your favourite shows you would watch together and the songs you would sing. You were at the very core of her heart, and where all the magic would breathe. The light and love she nurtured inside will live on you always. She fought every day for every second with you. That kind of love lasts forever. My Lou, I know you are larger than light up there, singing away, walking around in your favourite jeans, your hair gloriously bouncing as you dance to your favourite tunes, camera in hand. Your insatiable laughter filling the heavens. Just so much you. You are having such fun, like sending Footloose through the radio at the exact second I set to write this. I can't wait to see you again one day, my dear friend, but until then, I will hold the line caller and enjoy the light you left for us.
Thank you. You know, the incredible thing for me from hearing those stories and hearing about Lou's life, it's that paradox, and you know, the more you love, the more pain you have. That's a fact of life, I'm afraid. And if you didn't love, you wouldn't have pain. And you know, it's something magnificent in regards to Lou has shown the family and all of us probably that to love there's pain, and that's growth, and that's understanding the depth of love. And in return, we learn to love. So if we have pain, we're loving, we're lovable. And sometimes we need to know that in our lives, you know. And someone like Lou has given us the opportunity to actually understand, yes, I have loved and I can love. That's key. That's come through the stories. There's just a little ritual at the end, which we just need to do because it's important that we acknowledge Lou, and we acknowledge the fact that she has died. We acknowledge the fact she's probably risen within your lives now and the things that she lived for and loved. And that's where I think of these three in the front row here. They've got so much to be grateful for. But all I can say again is don't hurry things. Just take your time, honestly. Don't let anybody rush you, okay? Because you've lost a beautiful wife and a beautiful mum. Okay? So, I'm going to, excuse me, Lou, I'm going to pick you up. It's nice to be handled. We like to be touched sometimes, don't we? I'll give these to Morris, okay? Just to. I'll stand at the mic so they can get it through the system, okay? Place your hand, that's great. That's lovely. Yeah, terrific. So this is just a little final conclusion of this part, okay? The light of life is a finite flame. You know, life is kindled. It burns, it glows, it is radiant with warmth and beauty. But soon it fades and is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flame dances and our lives are full. But as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and dies. And what carries on is the memories. They become the light in our hearts. They just don't stay there. They come into here. And they're the memories you will always treasure, and the memories we have to hang on to. You know, what makes us human is not our mind, but our heart. Not our ability to think, but our ability to love. So, this part of the celebration now of Lou's life on earth, the stories, the laughter, the friendships, the many living memories that continue, have been leading us to this moment. The moment of farewell, which I think we have to do, and eventually to be laid to rest. You know, we put off goodbyes, us human beings. I do. We look for excuses sometimes to delay, to hold back, to touch and save a life one more time, and to have the presence of love one more time. But our living provides a bridge and makes physical separation but a prelude eventually to reunion with one another. So thank you, Lou, for your life. You leave this world a better place, a happier place, a more human place, because you lived and laughed and loved here. We now take your spirit with us, the spirit that has been shared this day. So rest in peace, Lou, rest in peace. Amen. 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 So, cup of tea, or is it? Cup of tea and some cakes now. Hey, thank you. Great.